thú vị, và phần này thì cô xin phép sẽ không dịch nữa nhé, để các bạn sẽ tập trung lắng nghe và cảm nhận được tất cả những gì mà bác James Mayhew sẽ trình bày với chúng mình. Bác sẽ bắt đầu kể chuyện và vẽ cùng một lúc.
This story hasn't got a dinosaur in it, but it's got a creature a bit like a dinosaur. It has a dragon. Yeah. And the story is a story that's told very often in England. The story is called St. George and the Dragon. After I've done some drawing, I'm going to be using some paints as well to colour the picture in. I'll need some water for that. So I'm going to pour some water here, maybe a little extra into the lid, like that. I have some paintbrushes to use. And I think we're ready. The story begins a long time ago, maybe 1,000 years ago, with a hill. This was a big hill, almost a mountain, but not quite a mountain. And it looked a bit like this. On top of the hill there stood a castle. The castle was like this. I wonder, who can guess who lived inside the castle? What do you think?
I think inside the castle would be the king and the princess.
Well done. There was a king and a princess and a queen, in fact, the mother. And they all lived together in this mighty castle, high on a hill. Let's draw some windows, and maybe a few little bricks. There were some trees growing around it like this. Flags fluttering from the towers. It was a beautiful castle, but they weren't happy. No, they weren't happy. Nobody in the town nearby was happy. Nobody in the whole land was happy, because they had a very big problem in this country. The big problem is coming down here. There was another hill, and in this hill there was a cave. And inside the cave there lived a terrible fire-breathing dragon. And everybody in this country was very scared of the dragon, because every time they left their houses, they went anywhere near the cave, they were in terrible danger of being eaten by the dragon. So everybody went to see the king. They said to the king, "What are we going to do about this dragon? You're in charge. You must think of a way of stopping the dragon from eating us." So the king had a think, and he said, "If the dragon is hungry, we should give him some food." Everyone said, "That's a good idea, but what food should we give him?" And the king said, "What do you think?" They decided to give him a sheep. So the next day they left the sheep outside the dragon's cave. When he woke up, he came out of his cave, snorting and snuffling, and there he saw the sheep. And he gobbled it up, all of it. And then his tummy was full. And because his tummy was full, he went into the cave and he curled up like a cat, and he fell asleep. And soon he was snoring. He was snoring so loudly the whole hill shook. Who can snore like a dragon? Can you make a noise like a dragon sleeping? A bit like that, but louder. Who can make that noise? Very. So the dragon was happy, the people were happy, everyone was safe. Everyone thought the king was clever. The next day they gave the dragon another sheep. The same thing happened. He slept in his cave all day, and everyone was safe. And so it was every single day. They gave the dragon a sheep, until one day when they discovered there were no more sheep, because the the dragon had eaten them all. So they said to the king, "Oh, king, what shall we do now?" And the king said, "Don't worry, tomorrow you can give the dragon a cow." So they did. The next day they gave the dragon a cow, and he ate up the cow. And that was good, because the dragon slept and he was happy. Day after day they gave the dragon one cow, until there were no cows left. Next the king said, "Give the dragon a pig." And they did. A pig every day, and the dragon gobbled up all the pigs. After that the king said, "Try chickens." Well, they're a bit smaller. They had to give the dragon 10 chickens a day. So soon all the chickens were gone. So everybody went to see the king again, and they said, "Oh, king, what shall we do? The dragon has eaten all the cows, and all the sheep, and all the pigs, and all the chickens. Tomorrow, when he wakes up, he will be hungry. And if we don't give him something, he might eat us." And they said, "What shall we do, king?" And the king said, "We can't give the dragon any more animals. We need animals to eat ourselves. We need horses to gallop around on, because cars hadn't been invented. They needed goats for the milk to make cheese." So the king said, "I know, I've got the perfect answer. Tomorrow we will give the dragon children." Yes. And everybody said, "That's a terrible idea. You're a bad king. We don't want to give children to the dragon." But the king said, "Look, we've got all these children. We don't need all these children, do we? I think we can spare one or two. Which ones should we choose? Who do you think?" And the people said, "If we're going to give a child to the dragon, king, we will give the dragon your child." So they caught the princess, and they dragged her down the hill, and they tied her to a rock outside the dragon's cave. Well, pretty soon the dragon woke up, and he came out of his cave looking for something to eat, and there he saw the princess. He was quite excited, the dragon was, because he thought the princess looked a lot more delicious than eating a cow or a sheep or a pig or a chicken. So he opened his mouth very wide. He was just about to eat the princess when the princess saw a knight in shining armour galloping over the hill. Now, the knight was a very famous knight, famous for fighting dragons, and his name was St. George. And he began to fight this dragon, and he had a long spear. The princess was too scared to look. She closed her eyes. All she'd hear was the sound of the spear crashing on the dragon's scales. The battle went on for many hours, but in the end everything went quiet, and the princess wondered who had won. Had St. George killed the dragon? Was she safe? Or had the dragon eaten St. George? And was he going to eat her next? She decided to be very brave and open her eyes and take a look. And she was very surprised to see St. George and the dragon both alive. They were sitting on the hill and they were talking to each other. And the princess said, "Just a minute, what's going on here? You're supposed to be saving me from the dragon." St. George said, "Well, I have been fighting the dragon, but then I felt sorry for it." And the princess said, "Don't be silly, you can't feel sorry for a dragon." St. George said, "Yes, you can. Look into his eyes." And so the princess looked into the eyes of the dragon, and she saw his eyes were full of tears. The dragon was crying. St. George said to the dragon, "Why do you behave so badly? Why are you so naughty and wicked? If you were a good beast, if you were a kind animal, nobody would want to hurt you. If you were a good and kind creature, you could have really nice things to eat, not cows and sheep and pigs and chickens, or even princesses. No, you could come and live in the town, or maybe the castle, and have cake and bread. The dragon began to think about this. He didn't like living in his cold, dark cave. St. George said, if you were a really nice, kind dragon, you could have friends. The poor dragon had never, ever had any friends. And then St. George did something very brave. He held out his hand to the dragon. Now, the dragon could have bitten his hand off. Like that. But he didn't. Instead, the dragon held out his paw, and they shook, hand in paw, just like this. And in that moment, the dragon became completely tame, just like a puppy. The princess was amazed. She took the belt off from her own dress, and she tied it around the dragon's neck, just like the lead on a dog. And she led the dragon up the hill and into her father's castle. At first, everybody ran away screaming. Of course, they all thought the dragon had come to eat them. But the princess just laughed and explained to everybody the dragon was tame. Everyone was amazed. Soon, the dragon was giving children rides on his back, and they were giving him cakes and bread, and he was very, very happy. And the king said to St. George, please, will you stay here and teach all my knights to be as brave as you are? But St. George said, no, I can't stay, because I've had a message from the King of England about a terrible dragon that lives there. So he got on a ship and he sailed to England. It was a long way, it took him many, many days, but eventually he arrived in England, and the king met him and said to him, thank goodness you've come. We're desperate. All my knights have been eaten by this dragon. You are my last hope. So St. George went to look at the English dragon, and oh dear, it was twice the size of the other dragon, and much more ferocious. But St. George wasn't one to give up, even though he was quite scared, and he began to fight the dragon. Lots of people came to watch him fighting the dragon. St. George got very tired. He thought, I don't think I can win this fight. I think this dragon is going to eat me up. But just as he was about to give up, the dragon got tired and fell down on the ground. St. George thought, this is my chance. So he grabbed his sharp spear and he jumped onto the dragon's tummy. And he looked into the dragon's eyes to see if maybe there was anything good about this dragon. Maybe this dragon had tears in his eyes. But no, he didn't. This dragon was very, very wicked. And St. George knew that he would have to kill it. Now, the way St. George killed dragons is a bit scary. Are you feeling brave? Are you sure? Do you want to know? Okay, then I will tell you. So, St. George got his spear and he cut open the dragon's tummy, his stomach, and he took out the dragon's heart. But when he did so, an amazing thing happened, because the blood fell on his shield and dried in the shape of a red cross, like this. And the King of England said, it's a sign that your bravery has saved us from the dragon. And from now on, said the king, this sign will be the England flag. And even today, 1,000 years later, the England flag looks like this, a red cross on a white shield, and it's still called the flag of St. George, all because of this story. This story is told all over the world in different versions. In Spain, they tell a slightly different story. I'll tell you that one too. Because in Spain, there was a terrible dragon just near a famous city called Barcelona. And St. George was fighting the dragon, and the dragon was very, very wicked. And eventually the dragon got tired, and St. George thought, now I will kill it. And you remember how St. George kills dragons, don't you? What does he do? Take out the dragon's heart. Exactly. So he did that to the Spanish dragon too. He took out the dragon's heart. But this time, the blood did not fall on his shield. This time, the blood fell on the hill. And wherever it fell, roses began to grow. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of roses all over the hill. And to this day, there are hills around Barcelona covered in roses. And people say that they are a beautiful red because of the dragon's blood. There we are. And that's the story of St. George and the Dragon. So, now I'm going to move, you can stay there, and I'm going to move over to the table.